Okay, so let's dive right into Isaiah chapter 27. This part of the text, it really throws some pretty incredible, almost jarringly different images at you, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. You get these really stark contrasts, like right next to each other, how the Lord acts towards different things, different
You
groups.
see that tension straight away.
Yeah,
Powerful conflict, then suddenly this image of real care.
exactly. It kicks off with this really intense image of judgment, cosmic scale judgment.
Yeah, that opening image is something else. It mentions the Lord's sword, fierce, great, and powerful. Who's that aimed at?
Well, the text says Leviathan the gliding serpent, Leviathan the coiling serpent, and it explicitly says he'll slay the monster of the sea.
Wow, Leviathan.
Yeah, it's drawing on this ancient Near Eastern imagery, pitting divine power against these like chaotic, monstrous forces, big symbols of opposition.
Confronting a sea monster. Okay.
But
But like you said, it doesn't stay there. It pivots quite dramatically.
it really does. Right after slaying the monster, you get a song about a fruitful vineyard.
A vineyard. Quite the shift.
Totally. And the way the Lord relates to this vineyard, it's the complete opposite of the sword and the monster. He says, I, the Lord, watch over it. I water it continually.
Continually. And guards it too.
I guard it day and night so that no one may harm it. It's this picture of constant protective care.
And isn't there a line in there, something like, I am not angry?
Yes, that's crucial. I am not angry. It directly contrasts that fierce judgment for Leviathan with his gentle, nurturing stance towards the vineyard.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What makes the difference?
Right.
Why the sword for one and the protection to the other?
It's a very clear depiction of divine favor versus, well, divine judgment.
Okay, so the vineyard is protected, but it's not necessarily perfect inside. What about obstacles like briars and thorns?
Right, the text addresses that. If those pop up, the Lord says, if only there were briars and thorns confronting me, I would march against them in battle. I would set them all on fire.
So still pretty strong action against anything that threatens the vineyard from within.
Definitely. Fire for the thorns. But then, straight after saying that,
Ah, yes, there's an alternative offered, isn't there? Not just fire.
exactly, it's an invitation. Or else let them come to me for refuge. Let them make peace with me. Yes, let them make peace with me.
So even the obstacles, the thorns, get a choice. Face destruction or seek refuge. Make peace.
It's a really significant point. Judgment isn't inevitable, even for opposition. There's a path to reconciliation offered.
And if that path is taken, this vineyard, representing Israel, what's the long-term picture?
It's a vision of incredible growth, really. In days to come, Jacob will take root, Israel will bud and blossom and fill all the world with fruit.
Filling the whole world. That's quite a promise. Expansive.
From protected vineyard to global fruitfulness.
Now that's the future hope. But the chapter also touches on the past, right? The suffering Israel went through. It asks a kind of comparison question.
It does. It gets into this complex area, asking if the Lord struck Israel as hard as he struck her enemies. It mentions the suffering came through warfare and exile.
Driven out by a fierce blast like an east wind.
Yeah. The sense is that while the judgment and suffering were real and severe, maybe the ultimate intent was different compared to, say, Leviathan or their other oppressors. Not total annihilation, perhaps, more like a refining process, albeit a harsh one.
And connected to that, there's talk about atonement. How does Jacob's guilt get atoned for? How is sin removed here?
It's tied very directly to practical action against idolatry. It says Jacob's guilt is atoned for when he makes all the altar stones to be like chalk stones crushed to pieces.
Crushed altar stones.
Right. And it adds, no Asherah poles or incense altars will be left standing. These were symbols of Canaanite worship, things forbidden. So atonement involves actively dismantling, destroying anything that competes with exclusive worship of the Lord.
Getting rid of the rivals, essentially. That's the path.
That's how the text presents it here. Tangible action.
Okay, so we've seen the vineyard, the atonement path. Now let's slip to the other extreme again, the fortified city. What happens to it? It's not fruitful.
No, it's the polar opposite. It becomes desolate, an abandoned settlement, forsaken like the desert, completely emptied of people.
It's animals?
Animals grazing, yeah, and people just gathering its dry branches for firewood, total ruin and neglect.
And the text gives a reason for this desolation, doesn't it? It's quite blunt.
Very direct. For this is a people without understanding, so their maker has no compassion on them, and their creator shows them no favor.
Lack of understanding leads to lack of compassion and favor. That's stark. What kind of understanding do you think that implies? Just knowledge. or something deeper?
That's the question, isn't it? Is it intellectual knowledge, moral discernment, or maybe, the understanding that leads to aligning your life with the Creator, acknowledging who He is? The text links its absence directly to the withdrawal of favor.
Hmm. So we've swung between these extremes. Cosmic battles, nurtured gardens, choices for obstacles, future fruitfulness, suffering tied to removing idols, and then utter desolation linked to a lack of understanding. How does chapter 27 bring all this together at the end?
It ends with this powerful image of gathering, restoration. After all the scattering and judgment, there's a promise of return.
Gathering from where?
The Lord will thresh, it says, from the flowing Euphrates to the Wadi of Egypt. That basically covers the whole region where they were exiled. And the Israelites will be gathered up one by one.
One by one. That sounds very personal after all the large-scale imagery.
It does, and there's a signal for this gathering.
The trumpet.
Yes, a great trumpet will sound, and those who were lost, perishing in Assyria, exiled in Egypt, the traditional places of exile, they will come back.
Come back to where?
To worship the Lord on the holy mountain in Jerusalem. It culminates in restored worship in the right place. It's a complete reversal of the exile and desolation.
Wow. Okay, so from sea monsters to vineyards, desolate cities to a great trumpet call gathering everyone home, it really covers a massive sweep of themes.
It absolutely does. These sharp contrasts are laid out. Judgment and protection, desolation and fruitfulness, exile and gathering. And often the difference seems to hinge on things like seeking refuge, dealing with idolatry, and possessing or lacking understanding.
So as you think about Isaiah 27, maybe consider those really stark pictures. Protection versus abandonment, growth versus ruin, being scattered versus being gathered. What does this ancient text suggest to you about the conditions that lead to experiencing God's favor versus his judgment? And what about that path back from exile, from desolation, towards being gathered and flourishing again? Definitely gives you a lot to chew on.